Now, everyone defaults to AWS, but is AWS the only game in town? Of course not. So then people think, oh, I'll go to Azure, I'll go to GCP. So you've got sort of your big three, right? Yeah, and they also hand out lots of free credits to startups. And so very tempting, not at all unreasonable, but be careful with all of the sort of ancillary services. AWS Lambda comes to mind. A lot of these services seem very inexpensive at first, but the costs can scale and scale more rapidly than you expect. I've talked to startups running AWS bills of $15,000 a month, $20,000 a month, and what seemed like a very quick, effective way to get reliable hosting turns into a bill that's larger than an entire employee hire. So I'll give you a rundown on what we did, in the past at Hidden Levers and how that worked for us. So we used Linode. They're now owned by Akamai, but pretty similar to DigitalOcean. There's a lot of these players and honestly, if you use, so I'll say Linode, DigitalOcean, but I'll also put AWS Lightsail up here. There's sort of these lightweight versions of, the big players like AWS that have, risen up to compete with the Linodes and DigitalOceans. What did we have? So when we were running full steam at 8 million and rising, closing in on 10 million ARR, what were our costs? Our costs were around $800 a month, and then that was for server hosting, for database, all of those things. We basically had 2 prod server instances. So we had 2 prod servers. Call it 2 more integration servers. That was also production. And we had, 1 prod database, and then a number of test environments, so I'll just say test environments. And so all of this collectively was, call it, like I said, 800 a month. And we were supporting $600 billion in assets in terms of the total value of the portfolios that were loaded on our systems. This was a financial system analyzing investment accounts. And, so 600 billion in assets, I think something like 4 million accounts. And we were running analytics across all of those for $800 a month. Did it take some performance tuning of the code to make that possible? Yes, it did. But what that led to was, a less than $10,000 hosting bill. So something like, 0.1%, maybe a little bit more than that, but essentially a rounding error in our total cost structure. Compare that to a firm running 25, 30,000 in AWS, sometimes more, sometimes you hear 100,000, and you see how paying attention to building just what you need. You can run a scale business just having a couple of servers. And by the way, we also had substantial reliability. We averaged, in terms of unplanned timed outages, I think we were around half an hour a year. So over the course of a decade, call that something like 5 hours. And, you do the math, and that's like greater than 99.95% availability. I think it's even higher than that. Maybe not quite 5 nines, but for most industries, for most use cases, that's pretty good. And by the way, it was better than AWS.